Well, I want to talk to you for a few minutes this morning, if I can, about mothers and fathers and the importance of being a mother in today's world. It seems to me, and I may be wrong, but I don't think I am, that it's much, much more difficult being a mother today and a father than it was when I was a kid growing up. You know, we didn't have near the things to worry about or to distract us or pull us away than anything that you have to deal with today. About the only thing we had back home that would pull us away would be country western music, which we followed pretty closely all the time. And last night, Janet and I were sitting together and watching the program, and I said, Janet, hit mute on that thing. She hit mute on the thing. I said, have you ever heard this song? And I'm going to sing a verse of it and see if any of you have ever heard it, okay? Mother, sweet, precious mother, mother, sweet, precious mother, I saw God with Mom last night. Gonna write through letters to the heavens blue, one to God and one to you, and I'm gonna thank Him for being so nice to you. Mother, sweet, precious mother, mother, sweet, precious mother, I saw Mom with God last night. I'm going to write a letter to the heavens blue, one to God and one to you, and I'm going to thank Him for being so nice to you. You ever heard that? I felt pretty good about it because I got one on Janet she'd never heard before, you know. Well, you know and I know. I don't need to tell you anything different than what most of you already know. It's difficult being moms and dads. And if you think it's not, you've never been a mom or a dad, you know. Just wait till you get to be a mom or a dad, and then you'll suddenly find out how difficult it is to be one in the world today. The other day when I was getting ready to preach, I came across this article, and I thought I would share it with you because it says in a tongue-in-cheek way what I'm trying to say to you this morning. A little girl lost her front teeth, and it caused her to talk with a lisp. One day, her grandmother was reading to her from the King James Version of the Bible. She read such words as saith and have and doth and so on. And after a little while, the little girl explained, so God lost his front teeth too, huh? A family moved from a little apartment to a big house in the country. A friend asked the 8-year-old son, how do you like your new home? He said, we love it. I have my room, my brother has his own room, my sisters have their own room, but poor Mom, she's still with Dad. 4-year-old Andrew spilled something on the carpet. His mother responded with a screaming tirade. Andrew looked up and said, well, Mommy, you forgot to ask Jesus to help you to be nice today, didn't you? I heard about a missionary who was trying to stir up interest to get people to go to a foreign country to preach the gospel. At the end of the service, a woman dragging a little boy behind her, screaming, told the missionary, you know, I just feel like God's calling me to be a missionary. He is indeed, said the missionary, and pointing to the little boy said, and there's the little heathen you want to start with. Well, welcome to this Mother's Day. It's not easy being a mom. We all know about that. I read about a study recently that shows that by the time a child reaches 18, they've had to handle some 18,000 hours of extra child-generated work. In fact, this study, women who have never had children enjoy the equivalent of an extra 3 months a year in leisure time. Did you fellows know that? That's to say that it takes 90 days longer to be a mother than it does to be anything else. Okay, a year. James Dodson tells about the time he came home when his son Ryan was a small baby. It had been a terrible day for his wife Shirley. Ryan had been sick and had cried all day long. And once as she was changing the diapers, the telephone rang. And Shirley reached over to answer it before fastening up his diapers. Just then, Ryan had an attack of diarrhea. Shirley cleaned up that mess and put him in clean, sweet-smelling clothes, then took him into the living room and fed him. She laid him on her shoulder and was burping him, and he threw up all over himself and all over her and on the couch too. Dodson writes, when I came home, I could smell the aroma of motherhood everywhere. And Shirley cried out to him, was all this in my contract? It's not easy being a mom or a dad. Love is costly business. I don't have to tell you that. Ask our Heavenly Parent, whose love is not costly. After all, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Clayton read for us this morning a passage from John's Gospel. And I want us to look at that very briefly, if we can, again this morning. Excuse me. Jesus says in the gospel lesson here that I'm the good shepherd. I know my flock and they know me. My flock follows me wherever I go, he said. And I care for my flock and love them and try to sustain them in all that they say or do. Now, I don't know how much you know about sheep. I don't know very much about them, but I know a little bit about them. I know, first of all, that sheep are the dumbest animals in the world. There's not an animal any dumber than sheep. They are so dumb. If the leader, who they designate as their leader, when it comes in to eat, if he doesn't walk up to that bin and begin eating, they would stand right there and starve to death. They would never touch a drop of food unless the leader eats first. They're so dumb that if a mother is going to give birth and she's going down a grade and a pain hits her and she stops just the way she is and sits down, she doesn't think about the possibility of changing around so gravity will help her to give birth to that baby lamb. She will sit right there and die in childbirth rather than move. If the leader of the herd goes over a cliff, every one of those sheep will follow him. Is it any wonder that the shepherd had such a prominent place in the life of Israel? No, it's not. Because they had to watch over the sheep. A hireling won't do it because you can't pay someone to really care. They knew that. The shepherd, the good shepherd, was a person who watched out for the sheep. He stood at the door of the pen, and when they came in, He called them by name as they went in to the pen to spend the night where they could be protected from wild animals. Well, Jesus compares us now to sheep. He knows that we're so dumb that when it comes to spiritual things, we'll get in trouble in spite of ourselves. And we need him desperately. Well, I don't know what that's true, you know. Sometimes our heart tells us to do things we know very well we ought not to do. We end up doing them, right? Because we don't always practice what we preach. Is that true? Say amen. Amen. All right. We don't always practice what we preach. A man told about going into a restaurant to get a sandwich and had his 7-year-old son with him, sat down at the table. The waitress came by to wait on them, and she said to the man, "What would you like?" He said, "I'd like to have a hamburger." "What would you like to drink?" And he said, "I'd like to have a beer." She said to the son, "What would you like?" He said, I'd like to have a hamburger and the same thing that Daddy got to drink. And he just stopped. And he said, "Suddenly I realized what I was doing. I'd been saying one thing to my 7-year-old, and I'm sitting here doing something different. I've been telling him how bad alcohol could be when you drink it excessively. And here I am sitting here drinking beer in front of him. He just shoved it back and said, "Waitress, no, I don't want this. Give us a Coke." It's important that we moms and dads practice what we preach. If there's anything that can undergird and strengthen the fact of the home and the family, it's doing what we say we will do. There's no use to tell your child that it's important for them to go to church if you don't go. Now, I know there are exceptions when you can't go, but there's no use to tell them you ought to go to church if you don't go. I was talking to a young mother some time ago, been a year or two ago, in this charge, and she said to me, I told her, I said, "We've been missing you at church." She had a new baby, and she said, "Well, I just can't get there with the baby." And I said, "Well, why not?" "Well," she said, "when I get there, I can't handle the baby in church." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Well," she cries. And I said, "Well, that's all right. If she cries, the baby cries. We'll handle that." And she said, "Well, they don't get anything out of it when they're there anyway." And I said, "Listen, that's the first mistake you make in life. When you think a child doesn't get anything out of church, they may not get much about what I say or what you say in church, but they will feel and sense the joy of singing and fellowship and the importance of being at church, and that's where they need to be. Someday they'll be able to understand everything that's said, but maybe not right off. But they will make associations, and they'll know it's important. Why? You tell me why. Why will they know it's important? Because you're there. You're there. That's why it's important. It's not always easy to get up and get ready to come to church. Everybody knows that. Sometimes it takes discipline in order to do that. I'm going because I need to go, and I should be there. That's why I'm going. So here is a mother, and Jesus is talking about us as followers, just like sheep would follow, that we tend, if we're not careful, to get into trouble. Now, folks, listen. There's only 2 institutions in the world that God established. I want to say that again. There's only 2 institutions in the world that God established. One is the church. It's my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. It's not the Methodist church or the Baptist church or the Presbyterian church or the Lutheran church or the Catholic church. Jesus said, it's my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Not even none of those denominations will. Not a one of them. And then he established the home, the church and the home. The church and the home. God knew how important it was for the home to get grounded in him, because the home would be the place where everybody else would get started in life. The home would help to conform around the people who are there in a way that they'll grow up and become responsible people and become a part of the church in the world today. The family and the home. The communists said when they took over China in the 1940s, they said, if we're going to take over China, we have got to break up the home. Now that's how important they thought the home was. We will never conquer the Chinese minds and hearts unless we break down the home. We've got to break down the home. What did they do? They took fathers and put them in one commune. They put mothers in one commune, the children in another, and they brainwashed them. Brainwashed them. And when they done that, then they brought them back to the home. They had the Chinese people made into communist leaders in the nation in that day. The home is so important. Mothers are so important. I don't have to tell you, you women here today, you know this. When you became a mother, your life changed in a way that you had no idea it was going to change. Is that right? That's right. I know it is. Father's life changes too in a way we didn't know. We thought we did, but we didn't really know. No idea about the changes that we're going to have to make in order to be good parents in the world today. If there's one word that I could think of this morning that would tend to make the home a viable place, it's the word discipline. I do not know any other word that is so powerful and means so much to us today as the word discipline means. Now, I remember a lady named Pam Gruber told me when she was in the hospital with a new baby. She said, we were talking about rearing a child, and she was telling me, she said, you know, the one thing I'm not going to do with this child, I'm not going to rear them the way my parents reared me. And I said, what do you mean, Pam? And she said, well, my parents, I really didn't think that Mother and Dad loved me at all, because they never told me that I couldn't do anything. They never told me to be home at night at 9 or 10 or 11 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. They just let me make up my own mind when I wanted to come. They didn't set any rules or boundaries for me, and I just grew up like a weed. How sad that is. How sad. Not only do we need discipline, but our children need discipline. In fact, if they don't have discipline, they will react because they don't have it. Because down deep inside, they want it. They want structures. They want guidelines. in which they can live and work and have fun and get approval for their own life and living. Everybody wants that. Discipline is the one word that can make or break the home. The one thing that I had to learn when I was growing up as a child and then as an adolescent from my family was this. I had to know when Dad said no, he meant no. And I had to know when he said yes, he meant yes. You see. Now, I didn't have a lot of restrictions placed on me, but there were certain things I knew I had to do. I did not question those boundaries. All once in a while maybe, but not very often, you know. Because I knew where the boundaries were and where they lay. And I knew that when I got close to that fence, I'd get shocked. You know what I mean? That electric fence out there, you know, you get shocked if you get close to that. So you stay away from that, you see. And everybody was happy. My parents were happy. I was very happy, having a good time, having all the freedom I needed, and doing the things that I knew I needed to do. Now, was I perfect? You know I wasn't. Nobody is, you know. We all make mistakes, but friends, unless we are practitioners of the word discipline, we will fail as moms and dads in the world today. I don't care how much education you got. I don't care how much you don't have. Unless you know what discipline means, you will never, never, never satisfy the people in that family. Why do you suppose it is that when you go into the service, why do you suppose it is that they tell you, you dumb-headed idiot, you don't know anything. From now on, everything you know or have learned, you forget. It's all gone. And they start from the ground up teaching you discipline. Is that right, Ronnie? Teaching you discipline. Discipline. They teach you what it means if you're asked to give your life for your country, to lay down your life freely. Discipline. That's one of the reasons I love the service. I loved the Army because it taught me discipline. I loved discipline. Still love it today. Janet will tell you that I am a disciplined person. I may not be a lot of other things, but I have certain times when I do certain things, and I don't want that interrupted, you know. It's discipline. It's discipline. Discipline will help you to teach ideals and principles. Discipline will help you to teach your children devotion, because you will be a disciplined devotion person your pet self. It will help you to be a Christian individual, because it takes, it takes time to pray. You have to discipline yourself if you pray every day. Don't you have to do that? I do. To pray every day, to go to church, to do what you need to do for God in the world today takes time and discipline. And that's what God set you here for as mothers and fathers. He expects us to be mothers and fathers and to be responsible mothers and fathers, so that they'll grow up and someday they'll be mothers and fathers, and hopefully they'll be responsible mothers and fathers. Amen? Amen. All right.